Hello and welcome back to Hermana to Sistah podcast. Thank you for joining us. Today we continue on the domestic violence awareness series. We're in episode 5 and we will be discussing minimizing, denying, and blaming, which is another form of the abuser making the victim feel that their reality is not real. Many times they can use this to make the victim feel that they are losing their mind, that it's their fault that he behaves the way that he does, and being aggressive, being verbally abusive, emotionally abusive. So let's get into this. Get your cafecito ready and let's go. First, I'd like to talk about support and safety. Talking about abuse can sometimes trigger certain emotions, and especially it doesn't matter whether you're there now or you are the survivor. The triggers are very much part of your reality. And I really want to make sure that you are doing self-care as we are going through these different episodes. And for you, for your self-care, it could look different, right? From one person to the next. It could be deep breathing. It could be positive reaffirmations. It could be taking a walk. It could be calling someone, a good friend, support group, and just kind of talking about how it is that you are feeling. Whatever it is that helps you get through it and gives you support is key. So recognizing abuse is the first step towards healing and support. It's essential to understand that no one deserves, and I mean no one deserves, to suffer in silence. Reaching out for help is a courageous act, and support is available. And it's important that we really understand that we are not alone. There's many victims, many survivors out there. Acknowledging your experiences and the impact that domestic violence has caused can help you begin to reclaim your strength and find the path to safety and resilience. So what is minimizing, denying, and blaming? They are abusive behaviors that impact the victims, focusing on those specific dynamics in domestic violence. Minimizing involves when the abuser downplays the severity of his actions, of what he said, what he's made you feel, making victims feel that their experiences aren't valid. In other words, you're making a big deal out of nothing. Denying happens when the abuser refuses to acknowledge the abuse, leading to further victim isolation, to furthering victims' emotional abuse that continues to harm the victim overall. Blaming is when the abuser shifts the responsibility onto the victim, making them believe that the abuse is their fault, intensifying the victim's trauma. Oftentimes, victims will also minimize and deny the abuse that they are going through. It can be a difficult thing for the victim to do, because while everybody else can see what is happening and friends, family members try talking to the victim often feels ashamed, again is fearful. And in order to disguise it, she will minimize the abuse. She will deny that there is any abuse. So this is one way that victims are able to try to hide the reality of the abuse at home, because it's not always easy to talk about it. Understanding how minimizing, denying, and blaming create a vicious cycle of abuse is extremely crucial for victims. These behaviors prevent the abuser from acknowledging the harm that he is causing. And it makes it difficult for victims to seek help or to escape. If victims are able to recognize these patterns, they can begin to break free from the cycle and lean more towards reaching out for support, fostering their healing and their empowerment. Awareness is the first step towards reclaiming safety and dignity. So what emotional impact on women and children does this have? Domestic violence deeply affects women, children, and families, causing emotional scars and disrupting relationships within that family. It is so important to understand how much children are being harmed from witnessing and even from being part of the abuse. Because the fact is that the abuser is not just targeting the victim, his partner, but oftentimes children also get hurt. Children are also fear. Right? Children also walk on eggshells. Children can also feel that they are to blame for the abuse that is happening between the parents. Children will feel that they did something wrong, and that's why the abuser is physically, emotionally also harming them. As women, I think it is so important that we start prioritizing our children so that we can prevent this generational cycle of abuse and that our children can live a healthy life where they can express themselves, where they can at least have one parent that they can rely on. So many times we forget to talk about the children and we focus on the adult victims, and the children's voices often go unheard, but they are the most vulnerable in these situations. And we need to really make sure that they are our number one priority and that we keep them safe. So again, how do we recognize the red flags in the relationships? How do we identify the warning signs? It's so important because remember, the first red flags are so subtle that we can dismiss them or we can ignore them. But if we can identify them, then we can actually get an understanding that there are deeper issues within that relationship. The abuser will always come with some sort of excuse. He will have frequent excuses for his aggressive behavior. You made me do it. This is your fault, not mine. This alone should indicate that the abuser is minimizing the abuse he's instilling and that he's avoiding accountability. Guilt tactics that the abuser uses can often leave the victims feeling responsible for the abuser's actions, for his behavior, and can also continue to create even more of an isolation for the victim, for the kids. Minimizing, denying, and blaming can manifest as red flags in relationships. Victims may feel confused and lonely. Again, recognizing these signs are crucial so that the victim can understand the situation that they are in, and eventually, when the victim is ready, is find the strength to seek support. Recognizing abuse patterns in your life is a vital step towards healing. If you can take the time to reflect on your experiences, on your emotions, and start validating your feelings yourself, can help you understand that you are not to blame, that you are not crazy, and that what you're feeling is real. Through reflection, we can uncover the dynamics of these relationships, and we can start acknowledging the impact of how it's affecting our emotional well-being. This in turn can create fostering empowerment, and you can start your path towards recovery. Once you've acknowledged what your reality is, will empower you for you to do more for yourself and for your children. Please understand that you are not alone and the abuse is never your fault. Never. It's not the children's fault either. So many women feel isolated and really do feel that they are to blame for the circumstances that they're living under. But it's so important and so essential that you recognize that support is available. You can start by reaching out to friends you trust, support groups, any hotlines that you may be able to find, such as the National Domestic Violence Line that I always talk about, and start these connections that will only make you stronger. This will also remind the victims that they are not alone in their experience. It is just as important also to create your safety plans. It is so crucial. A safety plan is crucial for victims of domestic violence, and this involves identifying safe spaces. Where can you go in case of an emergency? Where will you feel safe? Any emergency contacts? How would you prepare storing essential items that you would need for a quick escape? And that would mean birth certificates, health insurance cards, social security cards, anything that is going to be important for you, and if you have children, for your children. Shop records or insurance, whatever it is that you know you're going to need to reestablish yourself and your children to start over. What are you going to need, for example, to transfer your children to another school? What documentation is going to be needed? What are you going to need to identify yourself, identify your kids? These are all things that we should be thinking about and making sure that we store them in a safe place, or at least have copies of it somewhere where the abuser can't find you. This concludes our podcast for today, and I leave with a reminder that you are not alone, that it is crucial for you to remember that there is support available for you. Reaching out is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. Connect with your trusted friends, with your family, support groups, and reclaim your freedom. Remember to love yourself first. Remember to prioritize your well-being. Remember your self-care. Until next time, thank you for joining us.